Radio. Winter,
Hello. Good. How about you, Hooli?
I'm good. Hey, everybody. Welcome to House Rules, episode 14. We are here with Nikki tonight. This is our final episode of House Rules for season 1, and we are wrapping it up with a fantastic guest star. We have Nikki, aka Beholder to No One, with us today. Nikki is a podcaster, a producer, and an all-around TTRPG, does lots of things person. There's too many things.
Understatement.
that Nikki does to put into words, but she's going to tell us about some of those things here in a few moments.
Absolutely. So, Nikki, tell us a little bit about your TTRPG podcast journey and how did you get into it and where are you today?
Okay. So I started in 2019. On my birthday was the first day that episode went out, December 30th. And I basically was like, I want to talk to people about D&D, and my husband's tired of listening to me talk about D&D. So I was just like, I'm gonna make a podcast. Why? I'm very antisocial and an introvert. This is a terrible idea. And then I did it. And it went okay for the first couple of months, and I took a break from it for 2 months because it was kind of not going in the direction I wanted. And then when I came back, I went full force for now of 2 full years since the re-coming back of it. And basically, I've missed like maybe a handful of episodes in that time, but there's over 200 episodes now in Beholder to No One, discussions, one-shots, actual plays. Just a bunch of stuff, and I do it all by myself except for some help from editing from Matt, which is amazing.
Well, in the bio that you provided when you first joined our community, you now professionally GM, you do podcast consultation, development writing, and I believe you have you've won awards for your podcasting.
I did win. I was 3rd place in the N World podcast, favorite tabletop talk RPG podcast, in 2020, and then 7th in 2021.
Wow, that
so I was like, yes, but I went the wrong direction. So in 2022, when it happens, I need to go ahead of 3 again.
Well, I mean, you've got more accolades than any of us can say. I mean, to even have been in the top 10 is outstanding. So definitely applaud you.
Like message all of your friends like, hey, go vote for me. Go do it.
You know what? Sometimes that's what it takes. And it sounds like it paid off. And people obviously like listening to your podcast.
It's doing pretty well. We're about to hit 14,000 downloads, I think.
That's amazing.
Which I'm still like confused about, but also like, is that a lot? Is it not a lot? Like, I'm confused because there's so many episodes. That's why I'm like, I don't know. I'm in a weird place mentally. You always think you're doing worse than you actually are.
Absolutely.
Imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome is something I deal with. I know. I'm sure Hooli does too.
All the time.
All the time. But
go ahead, Hooli.
Oh no, I was gonna say I have like a little way that I could possibly cure imposter syndrome, and that's if I had superpowers, right? So if in this moment you were granted one of 2 superpowers, flying or invisibility, which would it be and why?
Part of me wants to say invisibility because I can be wherever I wanted without being seen. And then the social anxiety would be like completely gone. But also flying sounds really legit, and I would never have to drive again, which would be cool.
Right. I think that my answer was flying, just because I would love to be able to get places without having to rely on a vehicle and just on my own locomotion kind of thing.
It's like, do you want to pay $400 for a plane ticket or just fly there?
Yeah, I'll just load up a backpack, just go. I'll be over there in like a couple hours. All good.
We just need to find the superhero hairspray that they have in the movies so that your hair stays perfect during the flight.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's called Aquanet.
Just enough Aquanet so my hair stays perfect.
Yeah.
Or you
Yeah.
just put it up in like the caps that swimmers wear, just put it up and then.
Oh, the latex cap. Yeah.
Yeah.
That could work.
How about you, Huli?
Invisibility. Because if I'm invisible, I don't have to pay for a plane ticket.
Until somebody sits on you.
Well, that's a valid point, but they never fully book first class.
That's fair.
So
just like stand out of the way until everybody's on board.
Yeah, I mean, I would be smart about it. I would get on a red eye or something that I know is going to have low flight numbers. So, I have other reasons for wanting to be invisible, but invisibility, that's my superpower, and I'm sticking to it. That's been my choice all season. So maybe next season when we choose different superpowers, I'll pick a different one.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with a different combination.
Yep.
Nikki, and so you run a TTRPG podcast, and you said that you've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for how long?
19 years now.
19 years. That's impressive. That's an impressive run.
I started in D&D 3.5.
I started just before it, right as it was coming out. So we're like right in there, sisters in that one. And your husband isn't a player?
He likes tabletop games, but not obsessed with them. Like, he could never play a game again and be perfectly okay. And if I miss like one game, I'm like, why would you do this to me? How dare you take this one game away from me out of 10 games? And then he's just like, game got canceled, whatever. He moves on with his life. But yeah, just not the same level of obsession.
Sure. I imagine that you're talking as you're up about rules or story ideas.
For like the discussion episodes.
Oh, you said that when you went into doing the podcast because
so when I started, I just wanted to talk to people about D&D originally. Like, that was my original original thought process. And then it became talking about particular subject matters. I like to have guests on a lot that have a new game out, so that's not D&D related, and we'll say, hey, tell me more about this indie game, so we can actually enjoy it and play it and showcase it, because I love to showcase indie games. But then there's also, we have some topics that are just silly, like the most annoying players at the table, which was an amusing episode. That was years ago, so I don't remember half of the ones we said, but it was fun. Or we have some serious discussions, like where we talk about sexism, racism, LGBT safe spaces, non-colonialism. Is this a job or is this a hobby? Like, stuff like that, where we actually discuss things that are imperative to tabletop games in the space that we're in, that people don't necessarily think about. Because there is a lot of times where the hobby one came up because I have a lot of issues with people joining my games that are in it as a hobby, and I'm in it for a business perspective, and that disconnect sometimes causes issues. Not always, but sometimes. And so I had invited someone else who also had that problem, and we discussed it for our own personal experiences.
Wow. I already feel like I need to dive into this podcast, especially as someone who's interested in making TTRPGs a career in some shape or form. And I feel that talking to you will give me lots of inspiration.
Hopefully.
and give me advantage on my role into getting into that.
That's my goal.
So do you DM or do you play most often when you're in a game?
I do DM. I think about half of my games currently I'm as me DMing. I have to actually think. I have 2 paid games a week currently, and I was DMing 4 games on top of that. Out of the 10 or 11 games I was in, some of the games have ended. Campaigns have ended for streams and stuff like that. But I'm a player in the other games that I'm in, so it's a healthy balance of what I run and play.
Oh, I wish I could get into some games as a player. As a GM or even as a player, are there any particular homebrew rules that have really spoken to you or that you've really loved in a game?
So the easiest game for me to have homebrew rules for is 5th edition, just because I played it the most. Though I play a lot of other games too. But if I GM, my homebrew rules are always that there is advantage. You can crit or on anything, success or failure, just because it's amusing more than anything. And I want the other rule with any game basically is role play out what you're doing. Don't just say I hit it with a sword. Tell me how you hit it with a sword and give details, just a little bit, so it's entertaining for all of us. But those are pretty much my basic ones. The biggest one is just like have fun and make sure people are all safe and comfortable at the table.
Absolutely. I think that, would you agree that safety and player safety, for participant safety at the gaming table has been a hot button topic of TRPGs recently?
I think so. Over the last year or so, I've noticed people talking about it way more. I never thought about it much beforehand because I never would think of DMing something that would become problematic or become triggering in a sense. Now that I've played in games that are horror based and like can touch upon those fears and those lines, I am way more appreciative of them. And it has come in handy a lot where I wouldn't know that was a line and I would have very easily crossed over it, not realizing it was a problem. A perfect example is I was playing a game called Lewd Grannies by Jules Salda. It's a hilarious one-page RPG where you're playing as little old ladies that are breaking into a wedding. And your goal is to like either steal the cake or like spread rumors or break up the couple, or like one of them is to drink your weight in booze. And when I talked to one of the players, their line was old women specifically drinking on New Year's Eve, and we changed it to a New Year's Eve party because it was for a charity stream on New Year's Eve. And I would have never known that, and we would have had a character possibly roll up a alcoholic old lady on New Year's Eve, and that would have been a huge trigger for that person and made it not fun for them. Or for me, I always put dolls, which come up occasionally, not often in games, but like every once in a while someone's like, I have a doll. And I'm like, nope.
X.
Yeah, everybody's like, X, get away.
Yeah. I think that if a certain friend of mine had joined any of my games, well, if she does join my games, I am very careful not to include spiders because she is extremely afraid of them. No judgment on that part. Right. It's just I have to keep conscious of that, and because I want her to be comfortable and be able to enjoy the rest of the story. Absolutely.
I've got players that play regularly at my tables that don't like gore or anything gross. Like even the mention of blood kind of makes them squeamish. So if we're in like combat or whatever and I'm being obnoxious, it's usually like abnormal amounts of glitter squirting all over the place. Or we homebrewed one time in a campaign that I was in that was set in essentially the realm of Baal, murder god. So we homebrewed a character who didn't like who was very squeamish. We made them what we called glitter goggles so that everything around them appeared in rainbows and unicorns. Essentially, they were in Adventure Time vision. And it gave them like the mental stability to know that they were able to picture things different around the world than was actually described. it really helped that player be able to navigate through some things that would have been otherwise, game ending for them, because they were able to say, oh yeah, that tree over there, that's definitely not a tree, is a glittery unicorn fruit tree. Like, it worked out for them, and it was just like they would focus on the details of that through the description rather than anything else. So it made them feel safe in a place that ended up not being safe for them. And that was the DM's fault for not checking in. And I think while we're talking about it, like, that's something that I think is very important for all DMs, GMs, lore masters, MCs, whatever game director you are, to check in with your players at the beginning, like in your session zeros, to find out what those limits are. Because that DM definitely didn't do that with our group. And as a player, that was my solution to help a fellow player get through a campaign that they were invested in with their friends, because the story took a hard left. And if the DM would have, asked in the beginning what people didn't want to see in the game, aside from the usual, like, children, essay, stuff like that, then we could have avoided that all the way around. And we could have went to, like, Willy Wonka land instead of, gushy heart blood land.
I think the first time I seen the X card used really well was actually my first time being on Weave the Tale, and I'm the project manager for Weave the Tale. But I was on the first game I was on for them was Colt. And Colt is a very dark, story-driven game where you are messing with psychosis and you're messing with some very messed up things. And there were some huge content warnings involved, and we were constantly posting them so people who listened had it, but we were constantly in Discord checking in on each other. Like, if there was an intense scene where my character had to describe she was gaslit by her psychiatrist in the story, and she had to describe in detail out loud how her girlfriend was killed. And it wasn't a pleasant death. So she's describing this, and my voice and character was shaking. So I was getting like a question mark, like, are you all okay? And everybody had to post like if they were okay or not. And that made me feel a lot better, that they were actually like, if you're good, we can keep going. Because sometimes you have those heartfelt moments, but you're okay out of character, and sometimes it just becomes a little too much.
Sure. So you mentioned that at the beginning of that you put up a content warning. Is that just like in the description of your podcast episode?
That one was a stream specifically,
okay.
But it was in the description, and we were constantly posting it in chat. But
Gotcha.
On the podcast, if there is a content warning, which there has been, so like the game we played of Chew did have a content warning. We post it in the description, but also in the post that we announce it on Twitter, like, content warning, these are the things you need to be aware of. That way people are aware before they listen to it what's going on. And I try to say it in the beginning if I know that it's going to happen.
I asked that because I'm currently running a Monster Hearts game, and one of the I don't know if you know Monster Hearts, but
a little bit, but not. I haven't played it yet.
It's the messy lives of teenage monsters, but there's a possibility for a whole range of content and such. And
usually, I would say, like, at the during the intro or the recap, adding in after the fact, this episode has a content warning of blah 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 blah. Please be advised, or something, and then going into the recap immediately after.
Well, how do you phrase those content warnings? Because we're not depicting, like, we're not showing images of, like, we're not showing naked people or the actual stuff. We're just, I guess, talking about it.
Yeah. So I would say, depending on the story, let's say hypothetically there was mention of suicide and there was sexual conversations happening. I'd say content warning of discussion of suicide and discussion of adult rated topics, and then also in the description put the time frame that happens in, if I can, and say please look in the description down below to see exactly when that happens if you need to skip over it, and make sure to take care of yourself more than listening to the show. That way they can see, okay, at 2 minutes and 55 seconds, I need to be aware, and then I know that it ends at this time and I can skip ahead. And you don't miss anything, but you also don't get triggered and continue watching to the show.
Awesome. Yeah, because I've always kind of, ever since I started wanting to stream, especially content that might be a little triggering or make people feel things, I've kind of debated over how do I, put that forward and make sure that even my audience, not just my cast, but my audience.
Yeah. If you put it in as many places as possible, then you should be covered. They have to listen to the beginning. If they skip the beginning, then you can't do much about that. You put it in the description, you put it in the episode, you put it everywhere you possibly can. I know that there was an episode that we ran, I think it was My City of Mist game, and part of the story was a faked attempt at someone's life. Like, it was a murder, but it was just so suddenly brought upon us that we didn't discuss it ahead of time.
Sure.
And it kind of took me off guard a little bit, and I got super conscientious in the game, and I immediately messaged every player and was like, are you good? Are you good? Are you good? Because I wasn't the DM in this game. And every single player was fine. I'm like, okay, just wanted to make sure that none of you had this as a trigger, because at that time I wasn't asking because I didn't realize how important lines and veils were. And that's when I realized, wait a second, this made me feel uneasy.
Sure.
What if it upset somebody else? And that one definitely had a content warning for that topic.
Oh, I think I was introduced to lines and veils through the game Alice is Missing, a silent role-playing game. Don't know if you're familiar with it, but those safety rules and the X card and everything are built right into the game. And then I went to PAX East in April, and went to a couple of panels where they brought up lines and veils and consent in the game, and there were some great conversations about, not only your cast's comfortability, but also the audience. And there was also talk about how lines and veils can be kind of hard-edged, a way to gauge your player's interest, and that goes, I think, back to what Huli was talking about, is discussing that with your people at the session 0 to kind of, and then even as you start into the sessions and stuff like that, kind of calibrating what makes people comfortable, what they're uncomfortable with, that kind of thing, and that can have better results, I guess. I'm not sure. There's different methods, I suppose.
No, I agree. And I also think noting to your players that it can change. I won't go into the details of what it was, but I recently had to add a new line to mine because something happened in my life and I didn't realize that it was a trigger. And then in the game, not thinking, because I was just in character, I said something and I realized, oh, fuck, I just... I'm sorry, I don't remember if I'm supposed to curse. I was like, oh crap, I just triggered myself, but I finished the sentence, and then as I was holding back the panic attack, and then I closed my camera and messaged them in group saying, I need a couple minutes. And then once we hit break, because I knew that topic wasn't going to come up again, I said, I have a new line now. Here's what it is. Please, I'll add it to the list of things. I didn't realize it was going to do that because I was in character and completely disconnected the two things until I said it out loud. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah. And it sounds like you managed to handle that very well, stepping away and using the safeties that you had already implemented in your own game. So sounds like that was handled really well. And
Thankfully.
Yeah, there was it may not even just be personal stuff. I know that after some of the events that happened in the nation over the last couple months in the U.S.,
Mhm.
I was running a private game, and the players were like, "Hey, collectively, we want to make these things lines because they are a little too real right now."
Yeah.
So we implemented those, and you know, I think that's a great way to keep everybody safe. And as you emphasized, having fun.
Mhm.
That's what a lot of this is
If you're
about.
not, what's the point of being there?
Exactly. On your podcast, like, what's the format? Do you bring on other people? Do you just talk with a co-host?
So it started with a co-host, and that method worked. But then I went through 2 co-hosts. The first one and I had joined too quickly without like getting to know them first, and I realized as we started having conversations, we had completely opposite opinions on everything, which is fine if you want to debate, but I didn't want to debate. And it
Okay.
was like conversations about like simple things like, oh, I don't like power gaming. Let's talk about min-maxing and power gaming. And he's like, oh, I love power gaming. And I'm like, wait, what? He's like, yeah, I do that all the time. And would go on and on about it. And it happened literally like 3 or 4 times in a row. So eventually that was when the podcast stopped. And then I came back 2 months later and I was like, I miss podcasting. Like, I really want to do this. And my best friend's husband was like, I'll do it with you. Because my best friend doesn't like to be online. My husband is antisocial as fuck. So my best friend's husband's like, yeah, I'll do it. I'm like, okay, well, there's going to be rules and I'm in control. Are you cool with this? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. I'm like, okay. And it worked out pretty well. Like, it worked out for a while. And then his life just got really busy and hectic. So he had to like take a step back and he just edited for a bit. But since then, since like October of last year, October of 2020, honestly, I've been soloing everything for the hosting. So the discussion episodes are like 1 to upwards of 4 guests. We try to do 1 or 2, but 1 to 4 guests come on and they pick the topic usually, unless there's something specific I want to talk about. And we talk for about an hour and a half, and that gets edited down to about an hour. And then that's every Monday. And then on Thursdays, we alternate between one-shots and actual plays. The one-shots are usually 4 players and a GM, and it's usually 2 hours. It was 3 hours long. Now it's 2 hours because I don't have time to edit for clients and myself anymore.
Yeah.
So that 2 hours becomes about 1.5 hour long episodes. And the actual play, or those are DM'd by random people, like whoever. If it's their game, usually the person who created the game will DM it. Sometimes if it's like a game I'm interested in, I'll run it. And then the actual plays are like, our shortest run was 8 episodes. Our longest was 24. So we're on our 3rd actual play right now. And they ended for their own reason. But those we record every 2 weeks. We record 2 episodes. And we're ahead of schedule for the most part. So right now I don't have plans for an actual play after this one. So I don't know what's going to happen, if I'm just going to let it fade away permanently or see what happens from there. Because they're not the most popular thing on my show. So I might just let it fade away once this episode is out. We'll see. I don't know. I haven't had time to edit.
Yeah, I think that is critical thinking about your brand, and also smart use of your time. Gauging what the audience wants, what they're enjoying, and maybe focusing on what they actually come to see your content for.
Yeah. The one shots seem to get the most love, but then the discussion episodes after that. But the actual plays, like the first episode and second episode, will get a lot of love, and then for any actual play, it dies off slowly after that. But when it doesn't get too high to begin with, it's like not really.
Yeah. There's really no bottom to go to. Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, how do I get this up? I think if we were just an actual play, I keep saying we, it's just me, but if it was just an actual play, then it would be fine. It probably would do very well. But because there's so many different aspects of it, it kind of is confusing for some people. And then some people don't understand that the discussions don't have to be listened to in order. So you can just listen to them in whatever order, whatever topic you want. Same with the one shots for the most part. There might be a part 1, 2, 3, but for the most part, you can just listen to the one episode and get what you want. But I have different Spotify lists for all of them. So you can just listen to the one Spotify list and never have to see anything else.
So how do you market in that way then? Like as a podcast consultant, is advertising and marketing part of your work with your clients?
I can give them advice on what I've done.
Okay.
Whether or not it will be successful is up to the algorithm gods. But what I was taught by somebody else from Seoul, who offers particularly marketing help, was to have a schedule. So I actually have I love Excel files and I love organization. So I have an Excel file with every day and time and what post goes out at what times. And then I schedule that out for like the next week or next month or whatever I can do. And it's anything from here's a link to an old episode every day. Here's Motivation Monday, like tell me something you're motivated about today. Selfie Sunday, stuff like that. Then there's like one merch post and like here's some Discord posts and Patreon, and then oh hey, I'm also on this show, go watch that. And I'm on this show, go watch that. So it's like 40 to 60 tweets that are scheduled each week, give or take. So I'm constantly active without actually having to be on Twitter.
Yeah, visibility tends, I think, to be some of the most important parts of marketing, at least in social media. The more that people see you, the more they're going to engage, and therefore actually take a look at your content.
Yeah, and I sometimes like have down, like this week, for example, I'm currently kind of in a burnout mode right this second.
No.
So my podcast has been put on hiatus until at least after Gen Con.
Are you going, if I may ask?
I am, yes.
Oh, fantastic. I will see you there.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to go, and I decided I needed a break because I've been for the last like 2 months editing till the last minute, literally, for my Thursday episodes. And every single week, without fail, it's like 12, 1, 2 p.m. the day of that I'm finishing editing an episode because I was editing for a client instead. And it's not feasible. I can't keep doing that. I was burning myself out and I was very tired. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm for the first time in 2.5 years, I'm taking a break and not posting anything. I know I'm going to post something on the 11th because it's advertisement that I agreed upon posting, but I might prolong the delay a little bit so I can get caught up with my client work and then get actually caught up, which was the whole point, on my own stuff afterwards.
Sure.
But we'll see.
Well, burnout is, I think, something that you see in so many career fields. And, podcasting and streaming are definitely no different.
I may be yelled at a lot by friends to take a break. I'm very bad at taking breaks. I literally don't think I've had a full day off where I didn't zero work since February.
Ooh, yeah.
Do you have any days where I did like an hour, but
do you have anybody who's helping you? Maybe will take up some of that workload? And
so my friend Matt edits my discussion episodes, which does take off one stressor each week because that's easily about 2-3 hours of work that I don't have to do. Every once in a while, I do have my friend Brianna who offers to edit something for me. So for the August 11th episode, I was explaining to her, like, I have 3 client episodes due, but I have Gen Con coming up as well. And I didn't know when I was going to get time to edit that on top of my paid games, on top of the streams I'm already obligated to, and also still go on my date that I'm supposed to have, and like all that stuff. So it's like, what am I supposed to do?
Congratulations on the date.
Yeah, thanks. It'll be with my girlfriend of like 7 months almost. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet.
But my husband and I probably will have a date too. I'm poly, so. But she's like, I'll edit it. Don't worry. I'm like 6 months ahead, and I'm like, how? How are you? Like, thank you. Yes, please. But how are you 6 months ahead?
Right. Got content for months.
Which makes it easier.
Well, I mean, you're touching on, mental health and keeping ourselves mentally healthy when we're in something that is so demanding. Because a lot of, marketing ourselves and streaming and podcasting and everything, it's very draining emotionally and mentally. I haven't even scratched the surface of all that you've done. And I find myself exhausted after streams and games and stuff like that. So I can't imagine the level that you're at. So
I think for me, one of the biggest things is, and this isn't an answer, this isn't a solution. It's just I have anxiety and I have depression, but my anxiety, I hate this term, but the way that it's described is high functioning anxiety, which basically just means you are a people pleaser who doesn't like to not work. So I've become a workaholic anxiety person that needs to constantly be doing something to keep that anxiety at bay. And if I'm busy, I don't have to think about it. Is the logic in the back of my head that my other part of my brain is yelling, that's not how this works, Nikki, stop it. Take a break, go to take a nap. So I just keep saying yes to things and saying yes to things, or then I get an idea and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. Let me do that. Can I do that? Can we do this? I know I don't have time, but what if I change the other thing to biweekly and then I change this to biweekly and we just all no.
Okay. No, that doesn't really work. Okay, let's
we can make this work somehow, right?
We can fit this square block into the circle. Yeah.
Shave it off, sanding, it's fine if it's now.
Yeah, we'll just we'll find it. We'll figure it out. Yeah, that I feel that in my soul. I mean, so I haven't made streaming and all this stuff my like full-time job. I really wish it was, but I've still got a few more years in my current career. But I still feel that same stuff in my career field. I'm cybersecurity for company, and it that people pleasing, that wanting to be the person who does everything, mostly because I'm not exactly sure that everybody else can. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm just going to do this. Okay, I'm just.
It's easier if I do it than if I have to fix it for you.
Yes, and I'm going to do it faster and more efficiently. And but quite recently, I had just this huge workload just dropped on my desk. And I'm part of a kind of a 2-member team, and the other person, bless their heart, they're helpful. Just like internally, I'm like, oh, I could get this done so much faster than you. But at the same time, if we're working on it at the same time, then it gets done faster than if I were to just do it.
Yeah.
So that I do have to relinquish a little bit. Yeah.
I will say that I didn't take some massive leap because I was at a safe space when I did this. Okay. I worked a corporate job for 13 years, and I got my bachelor's degree for health administration, was like working in the field. I worked at a healthcare call center since I was 21 or 20. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But since I was a youngin', and God, that made me sound older than I actually am. But
you cannot be older than 28.
I am actually.
Oh.
I'm 34, but that's fine.
I'm older than you.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.
So you're still a youngin'.
Still a youngin'. I'll take it.
These
So
young whippersnappers.
exactly. So the issue was like I kept saying yes to things, and I kept taking on more and more and more things, and I kept moving up in the company. So I was like, oh, this is the right thing to do. If I do more work, I get the success, I get the recognition, I get the you're doing a good job, and then I get promoted, and it kept happening, which was great until the last promotion. Or the second to last promotion, and then finally the last promotion. I stayed with the department for 6 years because I absolutely loved that department. I loved my boss, even though the job was boring as hell. It was like so boring. I stayed because the boss was amazing. He cared about who I was, what I was interested in. He cared about the podcast. He cared about. At the time, I was doing YouTube. He cared about YouTube. He cared about my art. He cared about writing, whatever I did. He's like, you're going to be famous one day. Give me a signature, blah, blah, blah. And supported anybody and everything. And then that department got laid off.
Oh.
So because I'd been there so long, I was easily able to move into another department, thankfully. But that's when it started going downhill for the entire company. And then my position got, I helped them basically automate my position by using macros and SQL and all that stuff. So my work of 230 hours a month went to like 30 hours, supposedly. I don't know where they did their math because it was still not 30 hours, but that was their logic. So they're like, here, we created a position for you. I'm like, cool, this is awesome, fantastic. Except that position was like the death of me because it didn't have a title. It was data analyst, technically. I did not analyze data at all. I do not know how to analyze data. I was never taught how to analyze data. I was the glorified, hey, we don't have time for this project, you do it. Hey, we need somebody to figure out how to do this, you do it. So I became the Excel guru and like the VBA guru, even though I knew nothing about those things when I started the position. And the workload just became more and more intense until like literally a month before I got written up, and that triggered me putting my notice in. I told them, like, I can't handle this workload. Like, I need help. It is not physically possible for me to do this. And I was doing that and full-time and podcasting. So I was working 60 plus hours a week, 70 hours. And they're like, oh, well, you need to make sacrifices on your nights and weekends, Nikki. You need to make sacrifices. And I'm like, I don't have time to make sacrifices. And they finally wrote me up because I made so many mistakes one month because it was too much for me to do by myself. And I told them that, but they didn't listen. And like literally the wording was like, as your workload increases, your quality decreases. And I'm like, yeah, no, what did you expect? Like I told you a month. No, you didn't. You didn't tell us that. And I'm like, okay. And she wrote me up and said like, or my boss at the time said, if you don't improve your quality within 2 months, you'll be terminated. Improve and maintain your quality. So I said, so you're saying I'm not going to have a job in 60 days. That's not what I said. Well, I can't improve and maintain my quality without putting in 20 more hours a week, which I can't do. I don't have the time. My mental health is already at the all-time low that it's been for a while. I can't offer you anything else. So what I'm hearing is I won't have a job in 2 months. And she, of course, denied any of that. So I signed the paperwork and I said, I'm going on lunch, and left, broke down crying, called my husband. He's like, quit right now. I'm like, I can't. Like, where am I going to go? And because of my anxiety, I need to have like that backup plan. And I didn't have that backup plan. It took me 3 days to decide that, you know what, this isn't worth it. I am miserable. My mental health is terrible. I hate coming here, to the point where I asked my doctor, is there an extra medication you can give me to make me stop hating work so much? Like, that's how bad it got. And I even at the point started to not want to podcast anymore, which was kind of my sign that like, this isn't okay. Like, this is the one thing plus your family that you look forward to. And that's it. That's all you got. Maybe you need to go. Maybe you need to do something. So my husband, we talked it out and agreed that we could survive on his paycheck until I found a job. and I decided to offer audio editing temporarily originally just to make some type of income, and
Sure.
it worked out a little bit. Like I got clients surprisingly, and after a month I'm like, this is feasible, this is enough to justify like a part-time job at least. And so I kept doing it, and now I do a crap ton, but most of my money comes from audio editing or professional GMing. And I'm able to do it full time, even though I do not make a full-time wage at all. I make significantly less money than what I was making before.
Sure.
But I am my doctor noticed immediately when I went in, because he said, "You quit your job, didn't you?" And I said, "What? How did you know?" He's like, "You're making eye contact for the first time in 6 months."
Wow.
And I'm like, huh, I didn't know that was a symptom of anxiety and depression. Okay, way to call me out, doc. But it was the scariest but best decision I made in my life. Absolutely most terrifying decision, though, because the unknown is so scary.
It sounds like since at least that event, you have become more aware of your mental health and are taking steps to address it.
Yeah, now so I started medication, thankfully. Like I've been on medication before. I've had these problems since I was like 16. It just never got this bad. So I started medications in like February before I had quit my job, which was in June.
Okay.
But they weren't enough. Like by like after 3 months, it was still like I was better, but I was still not great. But when I quit, I started to take more of a priority in what I wanted, and more of a general idea of what to say no to, and being able and willing to do so. Even though like there's people I could work with that would pay me like 3 times what I charge, but I would hate it every second of the way. So I'm like, nope, I'm good. There's no amount of money you can pay me to listen to your podcast. It was a 1% podcast. No, I didn't want to listen edit an episode about the richest people in America. I'm good.
Sure. Yeah. Keep your field. Yeah.
I'll just stay in tabletop games. It's fine. We're good over here.
Well, in that respect, has there been a recent podcast of yours, episode, maybe a guest that you've really enjoyed, really latched onto, a topic or a guest that you enjoyed having on?
So I like all of my guests. I will not pick favorites.
Okay.
I mean, I do like all of my guests. But some of my favorite ones that I actually think I learned the most from was B-Day Volters was on my show for an episode, and I learned a lot in that episode because we discussed stuff about like just the tabletop community and how to make it, basically, and how to make sure that you're doing the right thing to get to the right place, but it's like all luck, really. A lot of it is luck. So there's only so much you can do with that information. Some fun ones that I had, though, were the ones with my friends. So Jeremy Cobb from Three Black Halflings was on my show, and I met him before. Like I met him when Three Black Halflings first started, and now they're huge. Like they're gigantic. They're doing so great, and I'm so proud of them.
That's amazing.
But it's lovely to talk to Jeremy. Jeremy and Jasper were both on the show separately, but they're both such just lovely human beings, and we just talk about tabletop games and whatever. I also love whenever Brianna is on, because she and I can go on tangents and get ourselves in trouble because we keep going, I have an idea, and it's like, so do I. Let's do the ideas. And then we're like, wait, we need to not do the ideas, but we're both very bad influences on each other. Or whenever I talk to my friend Elliot, because we just can bamf off each other, and it's fun.
That's awesome. Those are some great like name drops. I'm definitely going to have to research into some of those. Lovely people. Oh, geez. And she'd like have a question, and then just goes.
Been there. PhD. Been there.
Well, we'll go with something simple. Systems. So you do like a lot of one shots,
Mhm.
some live plays. I assume across a variety of different systems.
Yes.
Are
So
there
I was
any that have like really stood out to you?
um I really enjoy Shadowrun.
I
Um
love Shadowrun.
I
Yes.
mechanically it's still a little crunchy,
Yep.
but lore wise I absolutely adore the system. And I've adored it for a while. I was introduced a couple of years ago, probably 6 years ago,
Hmm.
and it was 5th edition, but my friend made a D20 version of it to have all of us learn how to play it with the lore and like the basic mechanic ideas, like what's a fixer, what's a Johnson, who do you not mess with, like that type of stuff. How
Right.
low on the totem pole are you actually? You are not the hero that you think you are. And then I started doing streams of 6th edition this year and just
Oh.
adore it.
Oh. I'm gonna have to watch those because I love Shadowrun. I'm right there with you. I'm like yes.
Yeah, I was in 2 streams. Both were on Leave the Tail. One was Escape from Aslan, when we were all convicted uh, of whatever. My
Mhm.
character was supposedly an eco-terrorist. Um, I call it eco-warrior, but whatever.
Eco Defender.
Exactly. I'm defending the eco-environment. But we were all being sent to uh, death row, basically, and our ship got shot down, so we had a chance to escape. So it was us running to escape, and that was very much following the actual Shadowrun rules and mechanics. The other one is much more horror based and much more psychological trickery. So while we use some of the mechanics, we're not necessarily playing the right way. To give you a perfect example, and this will immediately let you know how not right it is, we've received 400 karma already.
Wow. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, you for those who don't play, you get like 5 or 6 per mission usually.
Yeah.
If you did really good, and it's
To
just like
get
here's
about
50 karma a session, and it's like, what?
to get like 100 times that. That's yeah. That's
And there was no time limitations either.
wow.
So like our first season, I think was all within like 3 days, maybe a week,
Sure.
and we like for like 200 plus karma in the first season. We're like, what do we do with
Wow.
all of this?
Phew. Let's see. Bioware upgrades, skill upgrades,
My
specialties.
Orc Street Sam Paladin, it was already very beefed out. Uh, titanium bones, the wired reflexes, the ortho skin, the cyber arms, the cyber eyes, the fake muscles, like all of the 9 yards. She had everything. Her strength and body and agility were all maxed.
I bet the essence was like tanked though.
Just a smidge. Like, you don't need that really. Like,
Yeah, it was
as long as you
essence.
have at least 0.1, you're fine.
Yeah, as long as you don't have 0, you are still technically alive.
Technically. But other than Shadowrun, I've loved Monster of the Week now. I've been in a long-term campaign of that with 2000 Tales Role Playing. We are on season 3. We just did our mid-finale arc, which was very sad. Very, very sad. But we do 6 weeks on, 6 weeks off usually, because the podcasts will be 2 episodes per session. And they want the podcast to catch up before we go to season 4.
Sure.
So that game is fun. That's been going on for about almost 60 episodes now in that show. And then I also really want to get to know more about VTM. I played a little bit Vampire the Masquerade.
Oh, yes.
I've played a little bit, but I haven't been able to dive into it enough. But I think I would really, really love the system if I had the chance to dive into it more.
I agree. Like I've definitely been on the outskirts of that community, looking in because I've got like so many friends that play VTM. I just have never gotten to join a coterie.
Yeah, we started a game that was supposed to be a podcast, and I ended up having to like cancel it, so it made me sad. But I have a character. If anybody wants Renee Anosferatu for your game, she's a doctorate in computer science, and she's totally full of herself, especially when it upsets the Toreador.
See, there you go, folks.
Give me a chance. Let me play my vampire.
Casting into the vampires, the masquerade. And in the meantime, I'm ready to jump into anybody's Shadowrun game. I've got sweet. What did I name her? Sugar Snap, something like that. I don't know. And then I wrote a short story during National Novel Writing Month, based at the Shadowrun universe. So that was.
I beat that once.
Yeah.
2016, I think it was.
Oh, mine was 15, I think. Mine was 15 because I was in a place where I had nothing but free time. So I just wrote more about it.
That's absolutely fair.
May I ask what your story was?
What was it? Okay, so I have 3 unfinished novels that I probably will never finish. That one was about a siren, a modern-day siren in a city who needs to find a way to feed that isn't going to kill people, because if you kill people, you leave a trail, and then the FBI and the cops get a little mad at you and try to hunt you down and find you and think you're a serial killer or something when you're just trying to eat. Honestly.
Trying to survive. Come on.
It's just rude. So she found out that you can feed off other extreme emotions, such as pain. And she went and did a Dexter, basically, where she went and tortured basically any man that would hurt people or not listen for consent, and would just torture them until they stopped wanting to do that, because she was messing with their mind the entire time as well, and then they would forget who she was. And she would feed and she'd be happy, and then there'd be a better person in the society, not realizing, hey, by telling them you can never lay a hand on anybody again, you just probably messed up their entire life, because they can't defend themselves or have a relationship now or hug anybody they love. But it's okay. You didn't know any better.
It's like mentally castrate them, I guess. I don't know.
Basically, yeah. Like if you like never lay a hand on somebody again, and they're like suddenly can never, and
like revulsion to touch someone, almost becoming a like germaphobe in a way.
Yeah, that one was fun. And then she fell in love with somebody. I don't remember where the story was going with that one, but it was a thing.
Sounds like a really interesting story, and maybe even the product of a good Vampire the Masquerade or some other system that you have. Maybe. What amounts to a kind of a succubus in a way.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you for sharing. I really appreciate that. Thank you for being here. This has been amazing talking to you. I really hope I get more chance to talk to you in the Heroes and Hooligans community. And we can find you on Twitter at Beholder to No One, correct? Mm-hmm. Anywhere else that you would like to?
You can also find me producing on Chaotic Wonderful on Twitch, where we have games Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tonight's our last game for the season, then we come back after Gen Con. And then you can check me out in 2000 Roleplays on YouTube, or 2000 Tales Roleplaying on YouTube, and Weave the Tale on Twitch as well. Our season is ending tonight, or tomorrow night is our finale, actually, of our Shadowrun campaign, which I'm not sure how we're going to mush that into a 3-hour episode, but we're going to find out.
I will have to check it out. I'm really interested, and of course, I will not be caught up, but I'm sure it's still going to be an explosive ending to the story.
Yeah, lots of memory loss. My character remembered she had a wife very late in season 1.
Oh.
And neither of them remember each other very well, so that's causing some little bit of issues.
Yeah, I imagine it would. Like, do you love each other now? That kind of thing.
Yep.
Well, I hope that our audience will go check that out as well and look Nikki up. And thank you again for being here. I wish you all the best and may the dice roll ever in your favor going forward.
Thanks.
So, thank you again, and we'll see you once we start this back up. Again, this was the last episode of season 1, and we will just keep watching for more Heroes and Hooligans content. Have a good night, everybody.